It's not about necessarily doing less if you feel you're good at it or if you enjoy it. Because sometimes when my husband has helped, I actually find that more stressful because he doesn't do it as well as I'd like him to. And also he doesn't do it in the time frame I'd like him to. So then I get double the stress because I'm having to try to remember to remind him to do it and to do it how I'd like. And actually I kind of prefer to do it better myself. But what I really want is the recognition for it. So I don't necessarily want him to do stuff. I want him to see what I've done and be grateful for it and kind of praise me for it. And the same with my kids as well. So if it's recognition we want, then we need to also say that too.
Hello and welcome to Parenthood, conversations about life after kids. I'm your host, Leonie, and every fortnight I will bring you discussions about the real and raw realities of parenting, life behind the Instagram filter. Join us as we laugh, cry and bond over the organised chaos that is parenthood. Hi everyone, we are very excited to be joined here today by international parent guru expert Sarah Ockwell Smith. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, so thrilled. And we've got Liv here as well. Liv, hi, how are we?
Nice to be here, this transatlantic recording that we're doing.
So, look, for everyone who doesn't know about Sarah and how fabulous she is, let me tell you a little bit about her. So she is a mother of 4 teenagers, an author of 13 parenting books, translated in over 30 countries, which have sold almost 500,000 copies. She has a degree in psychology, is an antenatal teacher, hypnotherapist, infant massage instructor, doula. Like, I don't think there is anything that you haven't done, Sarah. And you've now worked with thousands of families, providing expert advice and support. And now you're here with us. So we are thrilled to really get into your new book and questions around that. So your latest book is How to Be a Calm Parent. And Liv and I have both absolutely loved it. And what I liked about it, Sarah, is that I certainly went into it, looked at the title and went, oh, I know what this will be about. It will be self-care techniques, meditate more, do yoga, all the things. And it was not that at all, which was actually fantastic. I think I'm certainly probably not the first person who's told you that, Sarah, with the preconceived ideas around what it could be about.
When I announced that I was writing the book, I think maybe like the first or the second reply to the announcement on social media was, oh, please tell me this isn't all about yoga and breathing and bubble baths, because people are just sick of that message. And those things actually help. Obviously they do. But, I talk a lot in the book about self-care and how self-care can actually be really damaging for mothers when we feel that it's something else that we need to do. It's another chore that we need to get through every day. And also then when it doesn't work, we think there's something wrong with us. And we're like, well, I've tried the self-care and even the self-care didn't work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in your book, you go through so many topics that I know Liv and I were just nodding our heads going, yes, and essentially what it's about or what I got out of it, Sarah, was let's look at the facets of our lives that are creating us not to be calm. Like what is sort of, triggering us and why aren't we calm? And let's tackle those topics. And then essentially, then we can become calmer for ourselves and for our children. What I want to do, because we've got a fair few aspects to cover, and I was like, I had a million questions after the book, but we've sort of narrowed it down to 3 key chapters in your book that we think our audience will get a lot of benefit from. And I think everyone's going to laugh when they hear this because it's so us and our community. But the first chapter I want to delve into is why busy is not a badge of to aim for, discovering the lost art of doing nothing. So that is like a drop the mic like moment right there. So I want to start with Sarah. You were once crowned Britain's busiest mother, but you were exhausted. Talk to us about that time in your life.
So I think, I have to go, Britain's busiest mum, I think happened in about 2010, 2011, but if I kind of wind back the clock to when I had my firstborn in 2002, before that, I had a really good job in the pharmaceutical industry. And I was earning a lot of money with a lot of good prospects. And everybody I knew was really happy for me. And they would say, well done, what an amazing career. And then when I had my first child, everything felt quite meaningless. So I gave up my job to have to just be a mum. And from that moment, nobody congratulated me anymore on what I was doing. It was, I was very much just a mum. And I remember I opened my son a bank account, and the bank manager that was doing the application said, "Oh, what's your occupation?" And previously I would say, "Well, I'm an analyst for a pharmaceutical company." And I was like, "Oh, I don't think I have one. I think I'm just a mum." So he wrote housewife, which really irritated me at the time. But then it's, the fact that I didn't feel that I was contributing to society as just a mum or just a housewife. So I felt the need, totally subconsciously, totally of my own doing, to somehow excel at being the best one and be not just a mum, but also to start my own business, join every committee and volunteer things that I could find. And it was all, I think, about my self-esteem and the fact that we do not value motherhood in our society at all. We seem to think that you need to be a mother and something to give back to the economy, to, be a useful person in society. So then I had 4 kids within 4 years, which is busy enough as it is. But on top of that, I had like 2 self-employed businesses going. I was joining, anything that needed a volunteer. So at my kids' nursery, if they said, "Oh, we need somebody to organise a family fun day or something," I'd be volunteering even before I thought about whether I could do it or not. And this all came to a head then when I entered this competition, and I was really busy. So at that time I had 3 businesses, I think. And 4 kids I think they would have been under 8 then, under 10. I can't actually even remember how old they were, but I was on the school committee and on the school parent-teacher association. I felt really proud, look how great I am. Look at all this stuff that I'm managing to balance and juggle. So I saw this competition. I thought, I actually think I am really busy. So I entered it, not to win the accolade, but because part of the prize was a Caribbean holiday, which I really wanted. And then I won. And then I had this makeover, which was really stressful. And they sort of dressed me up and did my makeup and did my hair. And I looked really cool, and everybody was like, "Oh, well done, Sarah, you look amazing." And I just felt completely and utterly dead inside. And at the time I actually didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I still thought it was a good thing, something to be proud of. And looking back now, I was so ridiculously exhausted. I kept going to the doctors and saying, "There's something wrong with me. Please take blood tests. I must have a thyroid condition or something." And the GP would just look at me and say, "Sarah, you have lots of children." And I was like, "No, it can't be normal to be this tired." And I just really felt like I was doing a good job by balancing all these balls, and it was something to be proud of. And people congratulated me. People were really happy for me that I was so busy. And it just I felt I would be lazy in some way if I was like, "Actually, do you know what? This is too much. I'm going to stop doing it and focus on just being a mum." And it took me a long time to realise that actually most of these thoughts were coming from me in my own head. It was about my own upbringing. I still do think we don't value motherhood in society. I still do think we think stay-at-home mums or mums who work part-time are being a bit lazy. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of had a real epiphany over the COVID lockdown. I really struggle with not doing very much. And I do actually think one of my sons has ADHD, and I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, but I've kind of masked it my whole life. So relaxing has been problematic for me forever, but even more so when being a mum. And actually still now, if I sit down and do nothing, I still have these pangs of guilt when I'm thinking I should be doing something productive.
I so can relate, Liv. What do you reckon? Is that us in a nutshell?
Sounds like you, Lee. I'm trying really hard to sit in finding time for myself. And that was the realisation for me during COVID, almost the opposite to you, Sarah, that, I will benefit from that time. And, you know, you obviously did too, but yeah, to just find that time and build it in to stop, because we all, you know, how are you? Is, you know, often the question that we ask everyone, and what's it met with? Busy. I'm so busy, and I just want to describe myself in another way other than busy all the goddamn time, because I'm so many other emotions and things other than just busy.
Yeah, 100%. At what point did you realize, Sarah, that this just wasn't working? Like, did you hit burnout? What happened?
I think I always knew that it was unhealthy. I was always constantly on edge and constantly stressed and constantly anxious. And the irony was, as I was teaching parents how to be calmer and more relaxed. And it was quite interesting, actually. My first book was called Baby Calm. My second book was called Toddler Calm. And this is like sort of 10 years ago now. And 10 years ago, people were saying to me, the next book's going to be Parent Calm, right? And I was like, well, genuinely, I don't think I can.
Adult calm.
I'm not calm, and I don't know how to be. So I always knew it was a problem. But I think sort of things came to a head when 2 or 3 years ago I had sort of health problems, and COVID all came in at once. And it was the lockdowns that forced me to think, okay, you know, you are doing way too much. And it was the fact that I couldn't do anything that it felt so uncomfortable at first, but then I had to sort of sit with those feelings and think, well, why am I finding this so difficult when a lot of people I know are really enjoying it? So, yeah, really, COVID, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was an
I love hearing that. I love hearing that siren. That takes me right back to living in the UK and hearing sirens whiz past all the time. Thank you for making me feel like home for a split second right there.
When I'm talking on here, like, we'll have like one a week.
Yeah. So given all of that then, Sarah, what should people be looking for in signs that their body is reaching burnout?
So, I mean, I talk in the book, there are different stress responses. You may, so I'm talking about fight, flight, fawn or freeze here. So fight could be that you're constantly on edge, like you feel like you're about to get into a fight at any one moment. You might be very shouty. You can often feel yourself sort of holding tension in your body like a coiled spring ready to kind of bounce, let go, hit, or actually what commonly comes out then is shouting. Freezing would be very much that you're kind of stuck. So you feel very heavy and you've got sort of no motivation. You find it hard to keep going, and you sort of tend to try and avoid conversations that would be difficult, which is sort of fairly similar, I guess, to taking flight, but with the flight response, you're sort of ready to disappear away from things. So you are really actively avoiding things. And the one that I find the most interesting is the fawn response, which so many of us were raised to do, which is basically when we find ourselves in difficult situations, we tend to try and placate and please the other people and put our own needs last. And I think it's a really common one for mums. So we sort of bury our own needs to focus on everybody else. And then what happens when you keep burying your own needs is you ultimately reach a place of burnout. So you're more exhausted than you would be from sort of getting up during the night and looking after young children. And lots of kind of like, for me, I would come down with loads of small viruses and colds. Like I was constantly under the weather. Or difficulty sleeping when you can sleep. So when your kids are sleeping, that's quite a common one. But it will be different for everybody.
And can be over different time periods too. For some people, it can, really come up on you quite quickly. For others, it can be years and years and years of putting kids and partners first and then realising all of a sudden, oh my goodness, whether it's the fight or the fawn or whatever it might be in your time period, it can be very difficult. I'd love to talk about the fight response, maybe more so in just something that I've been reflecting on in my own parenting style, and that is my eruption. And your chapter 4 around, parents needing to be calmer to make the headspace so we're not always on the brink of yelling.
Yeah.
I just find I yell a lot, or my toddler yells and I meet him with yelling in response. And I think, God, who's the parent here?
Yeah.
And so I go to the space of, is that because I'm not calm because I'm so busy, or is it, a parenting response? One of the other things, now I'm jumping all over, but one of the other things that you said was, kids have such immature brains, and, remember when you are fighting with them that they're a toddler, they're a child. They're not able to meet you at the place that you're at.
Yeah.
What has been, I'm fascinated to talk a little bit more about that and what we can be doing more to catch ourselves before I yell at my toddler again.
Yeah, I mean, the frustrating thing is there isn't any one particular reason. Obviously everybody's different, but even individual people, there won't be one underlying reason. So, yes, a stress response that's focused on fighting will make you more likely to shout and yell, but you've got the fact that actually it's just really hard at the moment. And I think we're probably all yelling more than we would ordinarily just because, life, COVID, Russia, Ukraine, fuel prices and everything else we're having to deal with. Yeah, and it does all boil up inside. And then the other two things I think are massive is that we have, as you kind of mentioned yourself, completely unrealistic expectations of children in our society. A lot of the advice we're given for parenting and discipline seems to imply that good children are those who are quiet and compliant and don't answer back and do what they're told to immediately. And when our kids don't do that, because they're real kids, not the, textbook kids, but when they do behave in ways that are entirely normal, but we're led to believe are naughty, then that then makes us angry at our children, but also at ourselves. Why can't my kids behave when everybody else's do? And then the final reason is how we were raised ourselves. So if we were raised to be good and compliant and quiet, then when our kids act in ways that we were never allowed to as children, that is going to really, really trigger us. And we're going to feel this rage and this indignation rising. And it's not about our children and us in the present. It's more about what would have happened to us if we had acted like that towards our parents and carers. And then the final reason is if you were raised with parents who shouted and yelled a lot, not necessarily even at you, but maybe at each other, then that is going to be almost your default reaction to dealing with stressful situations. If you raise children by yelling at them, they are going to yell at their own children.
There's so much happening. And I think, and you do mention this in the book as well, and it's very topical at the moment, the mental load that's compounded by, needing to do everything and be everything for everyone and excel in our career and be in all the committees and then have to figure out, okay, which birthday party are we going to, which gift do we have to buy, who's doing the laundry, is the chicken in the oven, all the things that compound our lifestyles. And funnily enough, Liv and I did an episode on the mental load more recently, and it was one of our most listened to episodes. So very topical at the moment. And I think that also, as Liv was saying, sort of gets you on the brink of just eruption because there is just so much going on in our culture.
Things have changed a bit parenting-wise. If you look at the research, so if we're talking heterosexual couples now, that and obviously if you are in a couple, that dads are actually doing a lot more than they were doing when we were children. But what they're doing a lot more of is the practical work, so the physical load. So they'll change nappies, they'll do night feeds, they'll get up. But what's still happening is there's a huge sort of inequality in the way that the mental work is split. What's interesting actually is that if you look at same-sex couples, then that load is shared more equally. However, there is still a discrepancy in that the partner who earns the most and is seen as the main breadwinner still does less. So it's almost falling back into that old kind of masculine type 1950s role, like the main breadwinner. But I think we're sharing the physical load much better than we used to, but we're not sharing the mental load more. And I actually think that we are often quite to blame for that. And I don't want to make people feel guilty, but as mums, we do really, really well at things like organising holidays, organising birthdays and presents and parties, and organising stuff for nursery and school, and organising like the family's medical needs and all those sorts of things, you know, the sort of the life admin, you know, planning what we're going to eat the next week, doing the food shop and stuff like that. And we do this really well, and we kind of take it on almost unconsciously. But we're really bad at asking for help with it, and really bad at sharing it. And I can't remember if I said this in the book or not, but I would often get really angry at my husband for not doing his share more of the mental load, like for not taking on more of this stuff, because I personally find it more draining with the mental load than the physical load. So I get really, really angry at him. But I would have these conversations in my head and almost presume that he's psychic and know that how I was feeling. And I get and actually a couple of times I've even had dreams and I've woken up angry at him, and he hasn't got a clue about any of this stuff because it all goes on inside my own head. And I kind of think, well, what I really do need to do is to discuss this. So in the book, there's like a whole massive long exercise for you to do together. But actually raising the points is really important. I think a lot of women don't. They just get very, very angry. What's quite interesting, actually, in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but yesterday it was Mothering Sunday or Mother's Day. And I've seen so many posts today from mothers who are saying, I'm really upset about how yesterday went. You know, I still cooked the dinner, you know, I still did the housework, and, you know, I got like a shop bought card and a shop bought bunch of flowers, when all I really wanted was somebody to just make the dinner and do the housework and make me a homemade card. And I was reading like this 30 women saying how difficult they'd found it. And the overriding thing that kind of struck me was, I wonder how many of these people have actually had a conversation with their partners about this. We get really upset and really angry, but I think that they're just inherently, men seem to be quite different to us. I know that there isn't actually sort of, in my other work, I've spoken about differences in what we believe are differences between men and women in our brains actually aren't. They're all created by society. But I genuinely think a lot of men don't think about this stuff. And we can't get angry if we don't raise it. But
totally agree.
The other thing is, it's not about necessarily doing less if you feel you're good at it or if you enjoy it. Because sometimes when my husband has helped, I actually find that more stressful because he doesn't do it as well as I'd like him to. And also he doesn't do it in the time frame I'd like him to. So then I get double stress because I'm having to try to remember to remind him to do it and to do it how I'd like. And actually I kind of prefer to do it better myself. But what I really want is the recognition for it. So I don't necessarily want him to do stuff. I want him to see what I've done and be grateful for it and kind of praise him for it. And the same with my kids as well. So if it's recognition we want, then we need to also say that too.
100%. And it sounds so cheesy, but that's been the biggest thing for me, getting that recognition. And more recently, I said to Jules, my husband, I was like, you're just not appreciating what I'm doing. Like, it's just like I'm spinning wheels around you and you're just like, yeah, cool. You know what? I'm like, tell me, well done, Leonie. Tell me, nice dinner, Leonie. Tell me the things. And so more recently, you know, he's become more mindful of that. And the other day he looks at me, he's like, look at me, because I'm always like, you're not actively listening, like, and you're not actively like, you know, engaged in this conversation. So I was doing the dishes. He's like, put the dishes down, Leonie. I need to tell you something. It's like, I'm actively engaging in you with this conversation right now. And then he said, I really appreciate the dinner and thank you for doing the dishes, darling. And I was like, this is kind of cheesy, but okay, I'll take it, you know. Yeah. But I think the first step is just acknowledging, and it was a bit of a funny thing, but, you know, the more with repetition, you know, that we have these conversations, I think the less resentment that we'll build. I don't know, Liv, like, is the recognition piece a big thing for you?
Yeah, I just feel like silence gives rise to approval for that situation, right? Like it's going to keep happening if you don't communicate with anything in life. So, yeah, being clear around, the level of appreciation or, what's important to you is just so, so important. We've certainly had all of those conversations. I was like, I'm just proud there are 2 types of vegetables on that plate, right? I didn't even get to 3. I haven't got the colour wheel, but do you know how much effort went into just get those 2 vegetables? Like, I need you, to really appreciate me for that. God damn it. Yeah, you know, they're the littlest things. But, yeah, as we spoke about when we did that mental load, and a similar exercise to what you've got in your book, Sarah, which is, just so valuable. The conversation around, and that was certainly the learning in our relationship when Mark said, but you like going to the supermarket and you like cooking, and if I was to set foot in the kitchen, then you'd yell at me. So don't give me a hard time about not doing those things. And really working through the distribution was probably the most, influential and powerful thing that's happened in our relationship since we've had kids. So, it's a really important thing to do so the resentment doesn't build.
And changing language as well, like often mine will say to me, "Oh, what's for dinner tonight?" Or I've hoovered for you, and I'm like, "No, you've not hoovered for me. You've hoovered because you live here and it needed hoovering." And why do I have to decide what's for dinner? So I think changing the language as well as the appreciation really helps.
Absolutely. One thing and a piece of feedback that we received from our episode on the mental load was, well, what about the single parents? Like, they don't have people necessarily to share that load with. You touch on this a little bit in your book, Sarah, but just in general, what sort of guidance could you give to single parent families?
So, I mean, it's so hard. I'm often, every time I sort of do a talk or a workshop, I'm asked something where there is really no easy answer. And this is one of them. I think we have to understand and appreciate how bloody hard it is. And sometimes it doesn't matter, how long you've researched or been working in this field, there just aren't answers to it. So I think you have to start with the first step of acknowledging how hard it is and acknowledging quite what you're doing and what an amazing job you're doing and feeling prouder of yourself. Rather than a lot of single parents will really beat themselves up about the bad things they're doing or what they presume they're failing at, but don't focus on how amazingly they're doing. And that slight mind shift doesn't take any of the load away, but I think is much more helpful. And then I talk in the book, obviously, about asking for help. I think as children, we were all raised to not need help. So we were all raised that when we were having kind of difficult feelings and tantrums, we were excluded. We were sent to our room. We were sat in timeout or naughty step or something. And we were basically raised from a very young age to think that when I'm having these difficult emotions and when I'm not coping, I should be quiet and good and keep that to myself and not bother my parents or my carers. So I think it's kind of breaking that mold and thinking, okay, I do need to ask for help here, which in itself is hard. I do completely acknowledge, though, that even if you do ask for help, that sometimes you don't get that help, and that can be really difficult, depending on the relationships you have with your friends and your family. I have a partner, but my parents died when I was very, very young, and so did my husband. So we are totally alone. I have no family to ask for help with. So I kind of understand that a little bit. If you are in that situation, then I think it's about trying to create that tribe around you. So what can you do to try and bring people into your life where you could almost like make a parenting cooperative? So, when you're really struggling, I can help you. And then when I'm really struggling, you can help me and so forth. So it's like, obviously friends, but friends with, I don't want to say friends with benefits because that would sound very wrong, but it's like creating that environment around you where you can help them and they can help you. And, that's really, really hard as well because we're really bad at making friends as adults. But I think you do have to reach out and become uncomfortable and have these conversations and try to meet new people and set things up, and this is why, the internet's really good because you can go and find like a single parenting group wherever you live and raise these conversations there. And if there isn't one, then absolutely start a discussion group and start raising it and see how you can help each other out there. But there's no easy answer to that, I'm afraid.
No. Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I love about the book, though. It's bringing to life all of the things, like we're just chugging along, living our everyday lives, chaos building in our minds and not talking about things. And what I love about the book is that you really do just break it down into what are the aspects of our lives that make it so that we're not calm and therefore not calmer parents. So I think it's really good. And I really reflected on a lot of the topics that you that led in with, Sarah. Like, it's fantastic just to look at it and go, okay, well, how can I be doing this better? One of the chapters I thought was really interesting was about the complexities of being a working parent and the guilt that that can come from that. But what I loved was you made a comment there, and I don't know if it was from someone you'd interviewed, but they basically said being a working parent makes me a calm parent. And I never really looked at things that way. I was like, that's so me. Like I need, and I know Liv, you'd probably attest to this too.
I sit here nodding profusely. Yeah. I'm a better parent without doubt, and a calmer parent because I do work, and that in some ways I feel like a cheat some days, that it feels easier to go to work than it would be to be at home with my children. Yeah. And, the guilt that I then feel around that is immense. It's, an interesting thing to, break down.
Absolutely.
I mean, no matter what you do, you'll feel guilty whether you work or whether you don't want to work. You will feel guilty.
I think we're owning that. I really think these podcast sessions have really just got us to a point of it is what it is, right? Like, let's just stop beating ourselves up. We are just all so tough on ourselves that, we're failing at something. Yeah, the mindset shift has got to happen, and we've just got to do the best we can.
Ask dads, do you feel guilty for working? They just don't say yes.
We actually had that exact conversation. I said, I feel guilty if it gets to 4:45 and I haven't left the office. And Mark said, I don't feel guilty if I'm still sitting at my desk at 5:30, let alone 6. He's like, and I don't want, and he was trying to get me to shift my guilt and thinking around it. He's like, I have dinner covered. It's no use you coming home at 6:30 anyway, because I've done all of the heavy lifting. So just be at the office if that's going to make you feel better. But still, the shift is just one through my own lived experiences and, anyone putting their own personal views on me that I, still feel guilty and that I'm not being a good parent because,
I just
I'm
don't
not
think
there.
Men can understand it. They speak from the privilege of being a male and not having all of this stuff on their shoulders from society, from like the hangover from hundreds of years ago from being a woman. They can't understand because they can't understand. And I don't think they ever will. But whatever you do, feel bad, whether you work, whether you stay at home, or I often say I had the worst of both worlds because I worked, but I worked from home.
Yeah. I think that is so many all parents after COVID, isn't it? Really there hasn't been any, work and life have just merged in together, and the separation between the two has been, non-existent.
I think good from the unit sort of show employers that we can work more flexibly, which is really something that we need to have happening as parents. But so COVID working was both amazing and awful at the same time, wasn't it?
So is there sort of a good way, we're talking a bit about mindset shift here, and Liv, you sort of, made mention of what Mark said, look, I've got this covered, let's shift the mindset there around you coming home a little later from work. I mean, Sarah, you've spoken to so many parents, and in all of the work that you do, what things come to mind around helping with that mindset shift?
Again, there's no magic answer here. I think we just have to, because we're not really dealing with reality. We're dealing with what's going on inside our own head. It's like the mental load conversation all over again. So in reality, your kids are happy. They're probably with somebody they have a good attachment with, whether that's, the family member or with a key worker at nursery or a childminder or whatever. So the reality is that the kids are fine. Yeah. In our own heads, how do we deal with that when we talk through the reality? We know they're okay, but we still think that they're not. I genuinely do not know what the answer is, to be honest.
Do you know what? It's for me, when I catch myself going in there, I start saying, I just try to be kinder to myself, because it's like I'm going into this place of just beating myself up for for feeling like I'm failing. And I'm sitting in my car or sitting on the train just saying, they're okay, exactly what you just said, Sarah, and I'm doing the best that I can. Exactly. And just by being a bit kinder to myself, I kind of just, sit back into that, and nothing bad has happened, and my kids are perfectly okay, and I am just doing my best. So I think that's a big thing for all our parents. We just got to stop beating ourselves up the whole goddamn time.
And, if you didn't have to stay at home, you'd still come up with a million reasons why that was a bad thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the load of washing is still sitting in that washing machine from when I put it on at 9 and it got to 5 o'clock. What was I doing? Or, there's always something.
Thinking, am I setting a bad example for my children? Am I sort of setting the example that women stay at home and look after the housework? So, I've been both. I've been out to work. I've been at home and doing just parenting. And then I've also been a working mum. And in every situation, I felt guilty.
And I wonder if it's compounded as well. I mean, you do touch on this in the book as well around social media and being able to have a glimpse into other people's lives. I know, you're sitting on the train on the way home from work, you're scrolling and, that parent was at the park with their kid today, or that parent went to a little play center and then, oh, well, my kid was at daycare. There's so many opportunities to compare and feel bad about your situation. And I know you say, Sarah, social media, it's a little bit devilish the way it can kind of get you. You're really going to manage how you use it. Did you have any more comments around that, Sarah, around the social media bit?
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I'm really grateful that I became a parent before social media really existed. So, back in the day when I had mine, we had Friends Reunited and that was about it. Facebook didn't really exist until I had my last child. And by that point, you're in such a different headspace. But I think it can be really helpful because it can provide that tribe that we're missing. And if you meet the right people, it can be really, really helpful, particularly when we're feeling really isolated. But then if you're surrounding yourself with people who make you feel inadequate, then it can be incredibly toxic. And we forget that what we see on particularly things like Instagram, it's not real life. It's what people are choosing to share. So it's like their absolute highlights. And if their kids look immaculate and they look immaculate and their homes look immaculate, then, it's as real as to going to see a movie at the cinemas. That's what they've chosen to portray. But in our heads, when we first see those, we're thinking, oh my gosh, they look better than me. Their house is better. They're more fun. They're more interesting. Their kids seem happier. And I think we all know that it's not real, but we get caught up in I don't think I'm good enough. But it's not. We have to keep reminding ourselves that it's not real. And I think we have to use social media really mindfully. And if we're getting more anxiety from it than we're getting help from it, then
delete. Yeah.
Unfollow.
And
unfollow, detox. Yeah.
But it is, I do get that it has a real positive side as well.
Yeah.
But it's just when you step over and you're thinking, okay, this is making me feel more anxious than positive, then it's time to move away.
Absolutely. And I think there's definitely been, the tide is changing with social media. I know what is becoming quite popular now is more the real life stuff and, the behind the scenes and the not so glossy photos and, all of that. I know a lot of the people I watch, I follow like other parenting, I don't want to use the word influencers, but, other parenting people who are sharing their lives. And I love just seeing like the funny stuff and the funny sides of parenthood. And I think that's what Liv and I sort of bring to the table with the podcast as well. We're just trying to bring that authenticity and reality and the funny humor around this situation, which, can be pretty full on and exhausting being a parent. So, hopefully we see more of that. I know, the ones like I used to follow the perfect, life of so-and-so and it just wasn't
wearing perfect matched cream and brown outfits and lots of pampas grass and lots of natural things and But then the other thing that really irritates me is the fact that advertising has jumped on this, let's show real parenthood or real motherhood, and they've turned all of it into adverts, and that I think irritates me more than anything else. But just generally adverts on social media you can see the insincerity.
They're everywhere. Yeah. I think people will be leaving in droves.
Yeah. So look, I think we've tackled a fair few fantastic topics today. I mean, for everyone out there, get the book. It is so good. Liv and I got so much out of it. Liv, before we wrap up on this one, any sort of final words for regarding the book?
I'm just going to keep going back to manage those eruptions and be kind to ourselves. Let's just stop beating ourselves up. I think, we can all be the calm parents that we want to be, but it starts with just taking a deep breath, right, and stop giving ourselves a hard time. I think that's what, I loved how you articulated that, Sarah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Sarah, how can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so I'm just my name everywhere, Sarah Ockwell Smith, on social media and my website. Yeah. So yeah, I've literally joined every social media platform there is now. So everywhere.
Well, you will keep it real, that I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Sarah, for your time. And it was great to chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and give us 5 stars if you're feeling fancy. Want to be part of the parenthood community? Join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram @parenthoodpod. Now I'll let you get back to the organised chaos. Until next time.